guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I am planning on reading in the month of June, and I have a substantial number of books, much more than I expect to read, although most of them are quite small. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get through them fairly quickly, but as always, let's just jump right in. The first book is the one that I'm currently reading, and that is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. Now, I read In a Dark, Dark Wood, which was Ruth Ware's debut novel a couple of years ago, and I wasn't that impressed with it, and so I hadn't planned on purchasing this or picking it up. But having seen a number of people talk about it and talk about how good they thought it was, I just thought that I was in the mood for a good thriller, so I caved and picked up this one. So this is about our protagonist Lo, who is a travel writer, and Lo is invited to go on a once-in-a-lifetime experience on a luxury cruise liner to see the Northern Lights. And while she is on board, Lo believes that she sees a woman being thrown overboard, but when she reports it to the security staff, they tell her that there is no one missing, that there are no additional passengers on board, and so from there unfolds a whole series of events. And I'm not too far in, I'm about 100 pages. So far I'm having mixed feelings about it. I'm finding Lo a very difficult protagonist to get on board with, but I will reserve my judgment until I have read the whole thing. But yes, that is the first book. The second book I have is The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan, and this is a book about a man who spent his whole life building a collection of people's lost things, and then he passes away and he leaves an instruction to his assistant Laura, basically instructing her to find the people who originally owned the lost things and to return them to them. And that's all I know about it, but I have seen a lot of people singing the praises of this book, talking about how charming it is, how magical it is, so I'm very much looking forward to jumping into this one. Then we have The Martian by Andy Weir, and this is a book which is a little bit out of my comfort zone because it's a science fiction book, but I am going to give it a go because I've seen a lot of people talk about it and talk about how the science is communicated in a way which is understandable for someone who maybe doesn't have such a scientific state of mind. I've heard that it's very humorous and a very intriguing read. We follow the story of Mark, who is an astronaut and one of the first people to walk on Mars. He goes up there with a crew, and then something happens and the rest of the crew have to evacuate Mars, I think, and they believe that Mark is dead, but he has actually been left on Mars and he is very much alive. But yeah, I've heard that it's very humorous, I've heard that it's very interesting. I'm curious to watch the film, which is partly why I have decided to pick this book up this month. But yeah, one that again I'm looking forward to giving a go. Then a book which I really don't know that much about, but again it's one which comes very highly recommended, and that is When God, oh that's a shiny cover, isn't it? That's When God Was a Rabbit by Sarah Winman. Don't know if you can see that cover there, and this is a story about a brother and a sister. It's about friendship, it's about love, and I really don't know much more than that, and that is so vague. But on the back it just says this is a book about a brother and a sister. It's a book about childhood and growing up, friendships, families, triumph, tragedy, and everything in between. More than anything, it's a book about love in all its forms, and I'm very happy to go into this book quite blind because I just think that that's going to make a much more magical reading experience for me. But this is one which I've been meaning to pick up for a long time, and when I unpacked all of my books, as you can see I've got my new bookcases behind me, when I unpacked them all I found it, so I immediately put it to one side to read. So yeah, another one that I'm hoping to get to this month. So those 4 books are quite short, and I've got a couple more that I'm hoping to pick up if I manage to get through those. The first one is the Bookish Mama's pick for June, and that is Close to Home by Cara Hunter. This is a thriller about an 8-year-old girl who goes missing from a family party, and nobody saw anything. Nobody on the quiet suburban street where her family lives say they saw anything unusual, and the detective who is investigating the crime knows that statistics show that 9 times out of 10 in a child abduction case, the child has been abducted by somebody that they know. So he thinks that somebody within this family unit is lying, and I feel like I'm excited to read it. I think that it's going to be a really interesting thriller, but I'm also a bit dubious about reading it because, as you know, I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, so I feel like it might hit a little bit close to home. But I know that some of the people in the Bookish Mamas book club have already read and finished this book and said that it was fantastic. So I am very much looking forward to reading it. I just have to try to separate myself, my parenting self, from my bookworm self when I pick this one up, I think. Then if I get through all of those, I'd like to pick up The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I read Caraval a couple of months ago, and I'm going to try really hard not to compare the two because I remember seeing in a lot of people's reviews about Caraval comparisons to The Night Circus, and they weren't necessarily complementary comparisons. So I'm going to try and separate out my reading of Caraval from reading this, but this is a very similar theme. It's about a circus. I believe that it has elements of magical realism. I have mixed feelings about reading this. A number of the booktubers that I watch have read and adored this, but a good number have also said that they felt quite detached from the characters and the plot and didn't enjoy it so much. So I'm definitely on the fence about this one, but I am looking forward to discovering what it's all about and, yeah, forming my own decision. And then if I get through all of those, the final book that I'm popping onto my TBR this month is Fire Study by Maria B. Snyder. This is the 3rd book and the final in the original trilogy of the Chronicles of Ixia, although there are 6 books in total, I believe, and we basically pick up the story of Yelena where the last 2 books have left off. So I can't talk too much about what this particular book is about, but the Chronicles of Ixia are basically centered around our protagonist Yelena, who grows up in a realm where magic has been outlawed, and she is imprisoned for a murder and given the chance to avoid the noose by becoming the king's poison tester. And she does this, and while she's doing this, she begins to discover that she has magical abilities, and a whole flood of things unfolds from there. I absolutely adore this storyline. The writing is so easy to get into. I've said this numerous times, but if you want an entry-level fantasy book which doesn't involve too much world building but you can just pick up and hit the ground running with, then this is definitely one to consider. I love the magical elements. I really enjoy the characters. I enjoy the dynamics between the characters. I like that there is a love interest in this book, but it sits on the back burner and it doesn't take primary focus in the story. I love that Yelena is a strong female protagonist, and yet I could not sing the praises of these books any higher. I just really enjoy them, and I would highly recommend them. So there you go, they are the books that I'm hoping to read in the month of June. As always, thank you so much for watching. Do let me know what you plan to read this month. Don't forget to give me the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will see you all soon.